Today, the Greens mayoral candidate, Jonathan Ranganathan, has announced that the Greens would like to ban poker machines at all council-owned venues. Thanks for coming in, Jonathan.
Thanks for having me.
Tell me why.
Well, I guess the first thing is that there are so many of these poker machines. We just pulled together the research recently, and basically for the first time, we've been able to reveal that there are over 2,000 poker machines on publicly owned council facilities, so sports clubs, RSLs, etc. And basically we want to get rid of them because they are immensely socially harmful. These poker machines are designed to be highly addictive. Like, people put a lot of energy into making these machines extremely manipulative so that people gamble away far more than they can afford, and that leads to all sorts of financial problems, relationship breakdowns, etc. So they cause a lot of social harm, and that's basically the primary reason for getting them out of these spaces.
So the social effect is what you're concerned
with. Yeah. And I guess also it's this idea that that's not quite what community facilities should be for, right? These clubs are meant to be spaces where people can come together and socialize and build community, but poker machines don't really build community. People just sit on a machine by themselves and lose all their money. So we're not just proposing, though, to get rid of poker machines. We're also saying that we want to put $11 million per year into upgrading and improving community facilities, but also into directly funding live music and performing arts.
What will happen to the council-owned sporting or community clubs once the machines are pulled out?
It'll depend. And remember, most community clubs in Brisbane are operating without poker machines. There's hundreds of community facilities that are owned by the council and leased out by community groups. There's only about 26 that have pokies.
So this will really affect 26 venues that are council-owned venues.
Yes. And
do those 26 have the 2,000 machines in them?
Yeah, and each machine on average is taking $80,000 a year out of residents' pockets. So there's a big revenue stream.
Where is that $80,000 going?
It varies. In some cases, it's going to the salaries of the senior employees who run these venues. In some cases, it might be going
running of the clubs.
And in some cases, like paying for field maintenance or paying for football players' salaries, etc. But I guess what we're saying is that we're giving clubs time to transition. We're not saying that we want to do this overnight. We're saying that the next time your lease is up for renewal, which might be in 2 or 3 years or 6 years or 10 years, the council won't renew your lease if you've still got poker machines operating. So the idea is to encourage more live music and performing arts and community activities in these spaces and transition clubs away from that Pokies business model.
My guest is the Greens mayoral candidate, Jonathan Ranganathan. The mayoral election, with the local government election, now is on in 2 months from now. Let me just wind back a bit. You said you wanted to put more money into these community or social clubs. The figure was 11 million, or did I miss it?
Yeah, so about $5 million a year in additional improvements, so wheelchair ramps, like concert stage upgrades, soundproofing perhaps, and $6 million a year into direct funding. So basically saying to about 50 clubs around the city, so not just clubs that currently have pokies, but a range of community venues, we'll give you $2,000 a week to put on a free live music gig for the community. So it's bringing more music to the suburbs.
How are you funding that $11 million figure?
Basically by reduced spending on projects that we don't think are essential. So basically crappy road widening projects is where the council spends a lot of its money at the moment. But the council has an annual budget of about $4.3 billion. So $11 million a year is a very small component of that.
So poker machines out of council venues, $11 million cash injection. That $11 million would come from the council roads budget.
Yes, and it's important to acknowledge that that $11 million injection is nowhere near the amount of money that these clubs are currently taking from poker machines. So we're not pretending that $11 million a year in additional funding for these things is going to offset the $163 million that problem gamblers are currently losing to these poker machines on council facilities. It's not a direct subsidy or compensation.
Final question, what have the community and social clubs said about your plan?
Well, the clubs that don't currently have poker machines love it because they're already feeling like they're competing on an uneven playing field. And I've talked where I'm going out to Camp Hill Bowls Club today, which is a great example of a community venue that's been running sustainably without poker machines, and they have a mix of other activities and food and drink and live music. So there's plenty of clubs out there that are operating without this stuff. I think probably the clubs that rely heavily on this revenue at the moment are going to object. But I also know that a lot of people who go to those clubs say, look, I'd prefer to be able to go to a community space that doesn't have gambling addicts stuck in the corner. And that it's not so much just a case of what do the clubs want, but what does the broader community want? And do we really think it's acceptable that we have more poker machines operating on council-owned public land than we do at the Treasury Casino?
Thanks for coming in.
Thanks so much.